This card is absolutely amazing. Hi everybody and big welcome to a cEDH card review for Elesh Norn, Mother of Machines from Dominaria Remastered. It's a 5 mana white and 4 generic with vigilance 4/7, basically the same stat line as she had before, Phyrexian Creator legendary creature. Now, she has 2 abilities. If a permanent entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Which means that she's something of a panharmonicon on legs in the command zone. But there's more to her than that. Permanents entering the battlefield don't cause abilities of permanent your opponent's control to trigger. Which also means that she's something of a torpor orb on legs in the command zone, making her an ultimate combination of both panharmonicon and torpor orb in one card, being a creature for 5 mana and legendary, where she is both giving you a form of small value but also interacting against your opponents at the same time. But there's something to really focus in on here. Now, Torpor reads, creatures entering the battlefield don't cause abilities to trigger, it's shutting you down as well. Elesh Norn isn't. Like, Torpor is a stacks card pretty much every stacks cEDH deck wanna include, but they can't because they also are on combos that require ETB effects on their creatures. But you don't need to break parity against Elesh Norn. So how much is she going to do in the format? Let's just begin by throwing this one out. I'm certain you have faced off against someone or several people at the same time who are trying to win with Thassa's Oracle. But we also have this guy, Dockside Extortionist, and every cEDH deck on the color identity of red have a Dockside in their deck, but no longer if you have your Elesh Norn in play. And honestly, here the video could basically end. We could just all go home and add Elesh Norn to every one of our stacks. I don't think Elesh Norn is gonna be auto-included, but it feels like a very good card against the current meta. You see, stacks cards' power level are evaluated on how good they are at affecting several opponents. For example, a counterspell is a great example of a one card with universal capabilities, able to deal with pretty much close to anything. Not anything, an Abrupt Decay will go through this, but mostly anything. While an opposition agent, still being absolutely great, will only affect people who are trying to surge. If an opponent isn't trying to surge, this is basically a 3/2 without any forms of abilities. So it's narrow. Alright, I still want to emphasize that opposition agent is absolutely amazing, but it is still only affecting surge. So you need more stacks pieces in play to affect multiple opponents. It might sound strange, but there are commander decks that don't surge that much. But I think that Elesh Norn will be great versus pretty much every one of your 3 opponents in close to every single cEDH game you could potentially go into. There might be a few where it does nothing against one player, but it will always do something in each pod against someone. And most of the time something against all 3 opponents. So here is a bunch of different cards cEDH decks wanna utilize with ETB effects besides Dockside and Thassa's, and these cards are quite common for those strategy decks. For example, Kiki-Jiki. Now Kiki-Jiki does not have an ETB effect on it, but he utilizes different ETB effect creatures. Instead of including all of those creatures, I'm just showcasing Kiki-Jiki instead. Derevi, now you still get the Derevi attack effect, but the Derevi ETB effect won't happen. CC is gonna be a tiny bit sad about that. Recruiter of the Guard, very popular. Imperial Recruiter, also really good. Eternal Witness, showcase up now and then. Gilded Drake, it's really good to get rid of that. Now Phantasmal Image does not have an ETB effect on it, but I'm including it here anyway because you're usually making it enter as a creature with an ETB effect, and you're shutting that one down. Like, usually you see Phantasmal Image become a secondary Dockside or a secondary Gilded Drake. Tatyova doesn't get her ETB land triggers. Chromox actually doesn't work. When Chromox enters the battlefield, you don't get to May, it will enter as a 0 costing artifact with no ability on it. And the Protean Hulk also utilize various creatures with various ETB effect, usually to do cool tricks. But there is a bunch more than that. However, Elesh Norn is clearly affecting a lot of different cEDH decks with her amazing stacks ability without hurting you. Like, the big reason no one is playing Torpor Orb is because everyone is on some form of ETB focused strategy, kinda. I personally think that the big winners of Elesh Norn are Venota and cEDH. Now Elesh Norn is not a human, so you can't accidentally flip into it with Venota, but it's still a stacks white creature that Venota could include. It's going to attack, it has a big body, like 4/7 vigilance, that is a big efficient attacker. It can easily attack. Sometimes Venota have problems that sending her creatures across the battlefield will usually make them die. This one will probably stay alive, but it's going to help you flip through Venota, and you can pay 5 mana because you're not paying for the humans you flip into. In cEDH's case, it's not something you're gonna tutor out with her. cEDH needs to be a 6/6, and that rarely happens. Well, when she becomes something of a 5/5, you're pretty much winning the game. So you're never really gonna tutor this one out, but I could see a scenario where you are suddenly tutoring it out. And when you do, you're gonna be happy about that. If this had a lower power and toughness, remove the vigilance, remove the casting cost, cEDH would absolutely love it. If it had like a 3 CMC, it would be in, I think, auto include for cEDH, but it is a little bit more balanced than that. 4/5 CMC feels more correct. But just naturally drawing into it and casting it feels okay too. However, this is where it gets to the point where it's not really auto included, because 5 mana is actually quite a lot. And I could see decks skipping it out just because they don't feel they have the mana curve for it. For example, this card could go into a Thrasius Dockside Emil deck, where Elesh Norn wouldn't just interact with your opponents, it would also help the Dockside Extortionist combo. You don't need 4 treasures to win the game with Emil and Dockside anymore, you just need 2 from your opponents. But this deck also utilizes Spell Seekers, and that is a great way to get double Spell Seeker triggers. Now you can win from only 1 Spell Seeker with a strange specific combo that we're not gonna go into in this video, but just increasing your value for your deck could be interesting as well. And that is a really important thing. Like, stacks cards are bad if they only interact with your opponent and doesn't do anything for you back in return. But Elesh Norn is giving you some small value when you cast your ETB creatures. For example, you could perform a cool trick with Eternal Witness. So here we have a 4-card combo, and that's bad because 4-card combos are really hard to assemble. However, Frantic Search and Snap can be replaced with other alternatives, and all the cards you're looking at are great on their own, so you could add this to your deck without caring, and if you naturally draw into it, happy you, but don't go for this as your main game plan. But there's another big thing we need to mention here. You need lands that tap for more than 1 mana, because Frantic Search and Snap pay for themselves, but you need to ritual more mana to be able to cast Eternal Witness infinitely. The trick here is that with Elesh Norn, you get double Eternal Witness effects, and you can return both Frantic Search and Snap or other alternatives to those, and they pay for themselves. But when they untap lands, you can untap lands that tap for more mana, which means you can generate mana to also cast Eternal Witness over and over. This could generate infinite mana if you have something like a Gaia's Cradle to get all the colorless and the green mana you need for Eternal Witness, and then just use islands here and there to get the blue mana for Frantic Search and Snap. Now, if you don't generate infinite mana, you will still draw and discard your entire deck, so you could like filter what you have in your hand perfectly with the netting 0 mana. But if you're generating infinite mana, then you have infinite mana and infinite card draw, and yeah, you win from that. But I guess we should also mention a really cool, fun interaction with Gilded Drake. So when Gilded Drake comes into play, you get 2 triggers and choose 2 different creature targets. So first you choose something, then you choose another thing. Then the second Gilded Drake trigger results and you swap positions. Then the second Gilded Drake happens and they swap positions again. The reason this is good is because you're swapping key positions on creatures. For example, a commander deck that is focused around its specific commander suddenly don't get access to that commander, and it's swapped to someone else's board state that can't utilize that commander. So let's say there is a Venota on the table and you want to interact with the Venota deck by removing the commander, which basically shuts off the entire engine. However, you don't want the Venota yourself because you don't run that many humans, so you're not gonna benefit anything from it. It's basically gonna be a 4/4 doing nothing, and that's sad. But there's another target you kinda wanna have but you don't want to interact with that target. Now, what you can do here is take control of the target you want, but then swap positions with Gilded Drake and that player that you stole the target from with Venota. Then Venota player loses Venota, and the player that suddenly got Venota theoretically can't utilize it either. They suddenly get a 4/4 creature that does nothing. So in this situation, you've gained a form of value and you've interacted with 2 players. And there are many more tricks than that. Your own creativity probably sets the limits here. That's it for me. Super excited about this card. Definitely gonna include it in a bunch of various decks that I have. Take care, guys. Thanks so much for watching.